Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon to Michigan football. Hope everybody had a glorious Easter weekend. I did, and we're here weekdays talking about the latest in Michigan sports. And there's lots to talk about. You know, we picked it up on Friday. Michigan added a couple basketball players. This morning they lost one, and we will get to that. Plus a lot of recruiting news since we last talked on Friday. I spent my morning. I did go outside, but I don't want to make it sound like I was just sitting inside all day watching Michigan's spring game again with J.J. McCarthy this time. But I was watching the spring game and looking at a lot of McCarthy made 10 throws and was going through. Somebody had mentioned last week, he asked me if he was going through his progressions. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to just get that video and make a day of it. And I did a dry run this morning going through it. So I watched all those 10 throws. We'll get to that coming up tomorrow, J.J. McCarthy Spring Day. That'll be tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So make sure that you're tuning in for that. As far as today, well, we've got recruiting, as mentioned, to get to. There was an offensive lineman who was making his decision in the afternoon on Friday. It was what we expected to see, and we saw it. So we will talk about that, plus that position group, which has been bolstered yet again. And then the Michigan basketball team, a different day and a new configuration for the squad overall. Right before 1 o'clock, we got the news about, and that's where we start. We got the news about Michigan landing two players, Trey Jackson, who was at Seton Hall, and Caleb Love, who was at North Carolina. This, in addition to Namari Burnett from Alabama that they got the week prior. So, Michigan loses Hunter Dickinson. They lose Jed Howard and Kobe Buffkin to the draft, and they come back and now say they replace him. However you want to look at it, the three out, those three out, and Michigan's three best players, and now three in. Love, who I think will be Michigan's best player. I think everybody thinks that. And then who knows about Burnett and Jackson. That's why I've got a question mark down here. I got a lot of question marks that I want to walk through and look at. Just look at the roster overall. A lot of people want to know, what's it mean? They got these three players. Are they going to be better? Are they going to make the tournament? All those kind of things. I'll answer that the best I can. The news about the player that is leaving, if you go and look through here, and if you have not seen it, you'll remember that Joey Baker, along with Jalen Llewellyn, there was a waiver to see if Baker could get an additional year. And, if he was going to be able to come back to Michigan, and it seemed like Michigan wanted him. And I don't know, it seemed like Baker would have wanted to come back, but I don't think that waiver ended up going through. Baker makes the decision and announces that he is going to play professional. So good luck to Joey Baker. And now that you look at the roster, I don't want to say it's set because other guys could leave, but you have the 5 starters, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So they've got their 13, but there's a lot of questions in terms of, who's going to play, where it's going to be. Is this going to be it, for this team? I put a starting 5 out there. It might not be these guys, but I'm pretty sure that Doug McDaniel and Caleb Love and Terrace Reed, those three will be starters for Michigan next year. I would bet on that. We don't know about Namari Burnett. Maybe, he was starting for Alabama until some of the freshmen ended up supplanting him. Maybe that's probably why he ended up getting into the transfer portal. And then Trey Jackson, I put him in here as well. He measures 6'10", Maybe he'll come off the bench. But again, this is just speculation and I guess on my part about a starting five for next year. If it matters, it's something to take a look at. Is this starting five better than last year's starting five? I don't know. I would say no. I would say from what I've seen, no. You just have a lot of question marks. We don't know what Burnett is going to be. We don't know really what Jackson is going to be. You look at their numbers and a 5.6 average and a 32% 3-point shooter, Burnett. Uh, you're gonna if you're Michigan and you're Burnett, you're wanting to do a lot better than that. Yeah, especially if you're going to be in the starting lineup or Michigan's going to be in trouble. And I would get to the same thing with Trey Jackson. Trey Jackson, one of the weird things about looking at his numbers is that he played more his previous season than he did last year, averaging just under 15 minutes. And so if you bumped up those minutes and then you bumped up the average and then you like the 3-point shooting, you could say, hey, you can see a path here if the numbers stay with the amount of time that he's playing out there, if he ends up being the starter. We don't know that. And so that's why you have a question mark next to Burnett and why I have a question mark next to Trey Jackson. But then you do get to the bench, and I'm going to say there's nothing but question marks. Although I have nothing but question marks up on the screen talking about the guys, and just looking at the bench, I'll just take them. Cheddar and TW2 together. These two players made up Michigan's starter, their fifth starter this year. Mostly it was Williams, but then Cheddar came in late in the season and got a few starts. For this year, next year, I think it would be nice, just looking at these guys saying, hey, these guys could be nice 7, 8, or even 9 men, but you've got 2 of them. And then you could say, hey, you might have 3 of them because you don't know about Yo-Yo. I put a question mark. He came on late in the year and, the adjustment and from a freshman to a sophomore, he could take a big jump. But there is a question. I don't know. You're going to say, Yo-Yo will be the 6th man or Yo-Yo will be in the starting lineup. You could project that. You might be right about that. But right now, that's a question. And it's like this for Cheddar. It was one of the problems. People always say, what was the problem this year? The problem was, Williams and Cheddar, they're like 7, 8, 9 men on an NCAA team, and they were the 5th player for Michigan in a nutshell. You're looking for it. I know that they weren't able to finish games. True enough. But looking at the roster, Cheddar and T-Dub being their starter, that was an issue all year long for him. We don't know about Llewellyn. Maybe he's going to be able to come back. Actually, out of all of these players, not the true freshman, Llewellyn, I would think that it would be pretty important. You get a guy, a lot of experience. If he's able to come back from that knee injury, experience in the backcourt, then you're talking about, a 3-pronged attack with McDaniel and Love. I could see that. So this seems to be somewhat important, talking about Llewellyn. Jace Howard and Greg Glenn the third, Michigan, they've had nothing from these guys. Howard is going into a senior season and Glenn is true sophomore year. And these are guys that are not expected to be contributors. Maybe Howard a couple minutes here and there. I don't know. You're going to tell me Glenn, stranger things than happen. And I think that's the category it's in. You wait and see. But as we sit here right now, I don't see much from these two guys in terms of contributing. And then the 2 incoming freshmen, George Washington III. Well, maybe he gets into, he could be a starter, but maybe he gets into the rotation. It's better if you can just bring him along. Like if you had Llewellyn, then you're talking about 4 guards and you can ease him in, all those kind of things. Or heck, who knows? He might have to be your first guy in off the bench playing heavy minutes. So you hope that he's ready. The Papa is a question mark in terms of he's going to be with this team. There's some things that he's working through or working at to be part of this team. So he would be a question mark in terms of his play. You put an additional question mark next to Papa if he's even going to be part of the team this year. So we don't know about the Papa. So that's how I'm looking at Michigan basketball here on April the 10th with the news about Joey Baker not coming back, not being able to come. Well, I don't know if he wasn't able to come back. He's going professional. There's speculation on my part about that waiver, but he's not coming back to Michigan, so we do know that part. And then the two additional guys, and with Caleb Love coming in, I'll take some of your feedback to see where you're at with Michigan basketball before we get to the recruiting. The one thing I want to say about Caleb Love, I saw a mixed bag of, you get fans, media, a lot of different people just weighing in on what they think about Caleb Love, what the issues were at North Carolina, the rumors about, why the team, tore apart and why they ended up having one of the worst years in North Carolina history when they were the preseason number one. And after going to the championship game last year, believe me, there's going to be a lot of drama when you get a team that essentially they had Malik who didn't come back, but they added Nance and they went to the championship game and they were preseason number one. And then they didn't make the tournament. When you have that, and it's a place like North Carolina where every day they're sitting around grinding out the roster and rumors and everything else and what's going on, a lot of drama surrounding the team. And then they had a half dozen players hit the portal, which, it just ignites everything else and rumors and all that. But I want to get to Caleb Love. Caleb Love, there's a lot of people. I knew this. Caleb Love's a big name. A lot of times in college basketball, we don't have big names. There's people that follow recruiting and they say, oh, he was a big name in recruiting because he was a 5-star. That's true. But this was a guy that you were able to watch for a couple seasons on a blue blood, and one who performed really well in the tournament, made his name in the tournament last year, was a big-time contributor, hitting big-time shots for the Tar Heels as they made the championship game. So he is a known commodity. Well, then this year he fell off a little bit, and for whatever it was with the team and anything else. But I look at this this way with Caleb Love coming in to Michigan. He's a tremendous talent. Absolutely. And he's also a top-notch athlete. Now, well, what's that going to mean? Well, it means a lot. It certainly means if he gets a steal and he gets out into the front court by himself, that, hey, we're not just looking for him to go up and score the layup. We're looking for him to punch it through. You're going to have some excitement that way. He can finish in traffic. But being an incredible athlete in basketball is more than just dunking on the break, although I like dunking on the break. I like dunking in the half-court set too. Athleticism means a lot when it comes to basketball, and he's going to be Michigan's best athlete. And I saw somebody say the best athlete at Michigan since Trey Burke, and I don't really have an argument against that, having watched the Michigan team and thinking about it. So a tremendous athlete, a top-notch scorer. He's got all that going for Michigan. And another thing that he brings to the table, talking about Caleb Love, also something that should not be dismissed, but put it into the swagger category. He's a great athlete. He's a tremendous talent, and he's got swag. So those are nice things to have. Now, having just those things, how he's going to fit into this team, how it ends up coming together, how they end up doing and all that, we don't know that yet, but we're just talking about some of the things with him. And I think those are the things that should be discussed along with, just his numbers. I mean, you say, how do you discuss swag? It's when you see it, you know it. And when you're out there playing and, the scoring is pretty obvious, just shy of 17 points. This is the one thing that, jumps out when you're looking at Love's numbers. The year last, well, I guess it's now 2 years ago, when they went to the championship game and ended up losing to Kansas, he shot 36% from downtown, which is pretty nice, from a scoring guard. And, he was huge in the tournament. He had fantastic games, including hitting a big shot against Duke, to get the Tar Heels in the championship game. Man, this guy was at the top of college basketball 2 years ago, right up there. I mean, his name. But then last year, the Tar Heel season goes down the drain. It's one of the worst in the history, all of that again. And then Love, shoots under 30% from downtown. So I don't know which Love is Michigan getting. Like people want, I want hard and fast numbers. I want to know about Love. I hate him. I love him. All right. There's a lot of different ways to go there. How are we to know if he's going to be the Love from 2 years ago or if he's going to be the Love from last year? New setting, another chance, last chance, different teammates, all those things, coaches, how it's going to work. I don't want to say your guess is as good as mine, but he's got the talent. He is an incredible athlete. He's a scorer, and he's got swag. So how all that fits in, what Juwan Howard and company are going to be able to do with him are going to go a long way in seeing if Michigan is going to get back and be back in the top half of the Big Ten. And what that means when you're in the top half of the Big Ten, normally, almost every time, you're going to be in the NCAA tournament. So that's what I'm thinking about, and that's what I'm looking at. Let's look at some of the feedback. Antoine says, I'm proud of you, Dennis, looking at some tape. That's what I'm talking about. Antoine, I watched some tape. You gave me one time you gave me tape of a running back that I'd never heard of, and I didn't write his name down, so I didn't watch the tape of him. But, normally I'm especially guys that are coming into Michigan, I'm going to take a look at. I'm going to watch a little bit of the tape, see what I see. Andres said, I hope you didn't put any money down on any of those Masters picks. Andres, I did, unfortunately for me, but I bet so little that it doesn't matter really if I win or lose. I found the sweet spot where, I put just enough down to give myself a rooting interest, and that's it. And I had fun. The Masters always comes through for me. I love it. And my only disappointment was, and you can't really do it. You can't do anything about Mother Nature. Was Saturday, and I already knew that that's was going to be a dicey day weather-wise. But I had all day Saturday. I could have watched from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, and it didn't happen. They had the rain, and then they I couldn't believe that they were playing in the rain. I'm watching them play in this downpour, and I'm thinking, I can't believe that they're playing. And then I was like, uh-oh. Because there went the horn. They halted play. And then a minute later, they just called it for the day, looking at the weather. So that was a little bit of a disappointment in me, but it came through. I liked it. I'll be right back in there again. And I look at when I wager a couple ways. I know for at least the last 5 years, I've had a bunch of winners when it comes specifically to the Masters. And I don't feel great when I'm picking golf. I'm like, I just watch the game, pick guys that I like. I mean, I don't put a lot. Sure, I might listen to this podcast. I might look at some numbers, look at some greens, and I look at some of that stuff. I'm not just blindly picking guys, but I don't feel like I'm some expert on it. And yet I've done well wagering on it. And then I'll repeat, I've said this a few times, but this year's NFL postseason, I won actually second place in a big fantasy football, which I have to place a lot more money. My friends like putting a lot more money in fantasy football and just overall betting than I do, but I do it because they're my friends and I like being involved in it. But I scored, which was a huge windfall for me, and so now I have extra money to play with. So I'm good there, Andres, when it comes down to it. Let's see, Scott. Scott says he's there's at least one more transfer coming. Yeah, hey, look, the days now you could look at it. Good, you start looking through the names here of Jace Howard, Greg Glenn, Cheddar, TW2. You don't know about Llewellyn if he's going to be good to go coming back. Conte's status is up in the air. So yeah, maybe even more than that. Scott. Scott saying Michigan is a Big Ten power forward coming yet from the transfer portal. Who from Auburn? Is that who you're looking at, Scott? Look for Yo-Yo to have a breakout. There it is. I'd like Yo-Yo to be able to have a breakout season. That sounds good to me. Antoine says Michigan basketball could be better if Juwan decides to actually coach and put some discipline on these players and run some set plays. Well, I think that considering how things went last year, being able to execute in late game situations is something that is hanging over this team's head and is going to be something that's going to be closely watched, even though, different group of guys. Heck, you got to get there to be able to execute and then try to win some games in the end. But it's certainly something that people are going to be watching closely this year. So he is going to have to change up some things. Scott talking about the Papa. And yeah, I mentioned Papa and some of his issues. Scott saying, Scott with a run of feedbacks here. Let's just go through them. We need Dennis Fithian as a power point guard to serve as a backup and provide a physical presence for the Maize and Blue. Scott, I want to tell you this, that they're not, 5'9" overweight point guards that are 52 years old are a dime a dozen. But I was out walking today, and I made it as far as I think the 2-mile mark, and I looked over, and there was the full court basketball. There was the basketball court, and I looked over, and I saw it. And I've been by it a number of times, and it was cold. But today, what is it? It says 63 degrees. It was in the 50s, and I looked over there, and I just thought, I'll be out there soon. And I've had this shoulder, but getting out there and draining a few shots, there's nothing better besides actually getting out there and playing against other people. And it's a great feeling. And it's funny that you say that, because as I just looked over, it was like maybe like Jim Nance. Hey, old friend. Nice to see you. We'll see you soon. So I'm looking forward to that. Scott's full of all kinds of things today. Jokes. He's not going to tell a lie. George Washington III is going to be a good one. Maybe. I'm not reading. I don't know. I'm not sure what the issue is, with Papa. Is Caleb Love related to the Bulls forward Bob Love from back in the day? I don't know that. Love is a pretty popular surname, so I don't know. There we go. Richard is in Florida, and all the talk is about the Tampa Bay Rays. Sorry about the Tigers' demise myself. Yeah, well, the Rays won again last night, 11-0, and so they're 9-0. You get off to a 9-0 start, and that included, 3 against, swatting the Tigers around, slapping them around for the first 3 games. Yeah, hey, Richard, maybe they'll draw 10,000 at the Trop if they go 10-0. Maybe they'll draw 15,000, over at the Tropicana Field in Tampa, and somebody will actually buy a Rays jersey or something. I have family down there that my cousin, and they love the Rays, so I hear about the Rays a lot. Richard wanting to talk more about the Rays. A good point to make: the salaries of Tampa Bay and Detroit are similar, and the results are so much different. Yeah, well, there you go. That shows you what a plan, being ahead of the curve, having a general manager, being able to execute, your organizational philosophy. And, the Rays were ahead of the curve, the analytical curve, and they were able to use it to, really the success that they've had. And even All of that being said, I'll give them the props, but what I will not give them is Cash, who 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when he lifted his, pitcher because he was just going by the analytics book, and it cost him a World Series by, doing that, but hey, you know, go ahead and, cheer on the Rays that way, because if they get to a big spot in a big game, there's sometimes you need to take the analytics and throw it out the window, and that was a time. It cost them a World Series, so I'm not a fan of Cash, and I'm not a fan of the Rays for that, um, the way they went about it. So that's it. Let's see, Antoine, guys are heated today. I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. Let's see. He's having a conversation with, uh, started to troll somebody. These guys, I think, are talking about another show between themselves. Look, I got news for you, Antoine. If you want your feedback up here, I know other shows, they don't put the feedback up, and you guys are kind of like talking amongst yourselves, which is fine. But talking about another show and trolling another show on this one, I'm going to ask you to, keep those out of there. It clutters the chat when it comes down to it. Dude, I appreciate you showing up and every day and contributing. But when I have no idea what you're talking about and, heckling other people on other shows, you know, that's not really helping anyone. So let's move on. And to do that, we get to some recruiting, which is something that happened on Friday. We'll go back. We were done at around 2:00, actually a little bit before that. Andrew Sprague did make his announcement for his college choice on Friday, and he picked Michigan. The 6'8", 270-pound tackle out of Missouri comes in and adds to this Michigan class. And you look at it, here it is. Ben Roebuck and Luke Hamilton out of Ohio. They were the first to jump in. Now Sprague. That's 3 offensive linemen. But you look at the next 3, and I think Michigan's only going to take 5. Now, you get, who knows, maybe Harbaugh and company look at these next 3 guys as 5 stars and the best in the country, and they'll take all 3, and then they would have 6. I don't know that, but you look at what other people say, and, you'd think 5. That sounds very reasonable. Blake Frazier, I told you on Friday, and I have a little picture of him in his dad's helmet back when he seems like I have a forecast in for Frazier. Right, Andres? I have my 3rd forecast in to put me above 50%. I think Blake Frazier is going to be part of this Michigan class. There's 4. So then it comes down to Max Anderson. This guy's a monster, and he's got a great offer sheet. You look at it, it's really a who's who. So, I think Michigan would love to have Max Anderson. Bennett Warren, he's listed as a 3-star on Rivals. He's from Sugar Land, Texas. He also has a great offer sheet. So if you don't care as much about the stars and you're more of, hey, who's offering them? You love Anderson and you love Warren. And of course, you love Frazier. So who knows when it comes down to it, first come, first serve, who's in, who's not. But the offensive line, which has won the last 2 Sharon Joe Moore Awards for the best unit in the country. No team had gone back-to-back. Michigan has an excellent offensive line, and they're stacked this year 2 deep. And now for the future, they're also making hay. So offensive line, if you say that, I think it's appropriate. I think we're all there with you. And anything can happen. Those guys are all big dudes. You're right about that. Could my forecast on Frazier be wrong? Sure, except that, I see the picture that he put out last week telling everybody to be quiet about Michigan. That makes it seem like he's going to Michigan. And then I also relayed the story of a former player that I talked with who was at the practice that Frazier was at. And then Harbaugh brought all the recruits, all the players, all the families, all the coaches in. Everybody was down on one knee. And he gave his fiery speech about, the buzz with the program and the way things are going. Let's say Michigan on 3, and they did that. And the guy said when he was walking out, he looked at Frazier and he said he looked like he was almost overcome with tears, maize and blue tears. So that's after that news. That's when the forecast happened for me. And then you get the picture last week. So I'm staying with the forecast. Andres knows it. He knows what's going on. Tall is good on the outside of the lines. You're talking about at tackle? Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And Sprague's big. There's nothing wrong with a 6'8" tackle. You get the size, and then you got to have those typewriter feet, or the dancing bear. Look like you got sand in your pants, being able to get down in a stance, all those kind of things. Pass block, run block, all those things. Here's Mark, and Mark, I'm glad that I see you today, because it was last week that you were talking about JJ going through his progressions, and with that, I broke out the tape. And for tomorrow, Mark, for you and everyone else, we'll walk through JJ's spring performance and look at his 10 passes that he had. But Mark asking the question about who I like next year for quarterback. Who do I like next year for quarterback? That's the question for Mark, and he is giving me the options. JJ returning, Orgy, Vince Young II, Jaden Davis being ready, a big transfer like Notre Dame got from Wake Forest, or an OSU 5-star cast-off like Joe Burrow. Yeah, well, what's hard to we can speculate, but what's hard is we don't know what kind of season J.J. McCarthy is going to have. I was looking at Pickett from the Steelers, who was a first-round pick last year, the only quarterback to go in the first round. And, he's picked in the middle of the first round, and he got a guaranteed, what was it, 7.4 guaranteed, which, it's a lot. But I mean, I don't know. However you feel, 7.4 is a lot. So that was in the middle of the second round, or wherever he was taken. I'd have to look. It could have been in the 20s. But he was a first-round pick. But 7.4. And if you look at someone like Hutchinson, who was number 2, what did he get? Like $35 million guaranteed. What I'm saying there, it's a big discrepancy. If you are looked at like you're going to be a sure, not just first round, but sure top 10 pick, as like CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud actually wanted to come back and play for another year at Ohio State. But, I'm sure his family and people walked up, and maybe even the coaches at OSU said, look, you're going to get $40 million guaranteed. And, we can give you tattoos, and, we can give you, whatever else we can try to come up with now to, scrape together. But, they're not going to get anywhere close to $40 million guaranteed that Stroud is going to get, whether he gets picked 1 or 2. I'm going with 2 to the Texans. But, $40 million, you can't do anything. Now, so if McCarthy has a great year, which he could, and, lines up where he looks like he's going to be in the top 10, he'll be gone. Do I predict that McCarthy is going to have a good enough year? I think that because Michigan runs the ball so much, like I was surprised at the end of the year, and I know that the last game is going to influence a lot of people. And because McCarthy threw the 2 picks, that's kind of the lasting memory. And for a lot of people, they certainly weren't watching Michigan in non-conference unless you're a Michigan fan. There was no interest in doing that. And Michigan didn't really play a who's who, even in the Big Ten, it was kind of like, is that really an exciting game? But I might have watched him against Ohio State. And he was great against Ohio State, but he wasn't the mixed bag, including the 2 picks. So I think people nationally are going to be down a little bit more on McCarthy, and then they just look at his numbers, and that's what we do. A lot of people just look at numbers, and you look and you're like, it's a pretty average number. Well, Michigan runs the ball so much. What I'm saying here is that I think that McCarthy might have a really good year. Hell, if Michigan goes undefeated again, But if they run the ball and Corum and the one-arm bandit and anybody else that you want to put in there, uh, it might affect his draft status. I'm going to pick that he returns. It's what is best for Michigan football. It's what I want. Look, if he comes out there and pulls off a season where he looks like he's going to be the top pick in the NFL draft, say, hey, you know what? I think he's got it in him. He is special. I think he's special. And I'll spoil a little bit of what I'm going to talk about tomorrow with JJ. Is that the first pass in the spring game I didn't like, and I'm sure the coaches aren't going to like it. The second pass in the spring game was all right, but it was his third pass that it slipped out of his hands, flew over, and he ended up throwing a pick. It was terrible. But last year in the regular season, the dude only had 2 picks. One at Indiana in the end zone. I didn't mind that interception, and the other one was against Penn State. It was a weird one. Other than that, he was perfect in terms of throwing the ball to the other team. That's a big deal. Now, he threw one against Purdue in the Big Ten championship game. Michigan was up. He had the most time that he had all year long back there in the pocket. And then, of course, he had the game in the semifinal. But, overall, he does a really good job protecting the football. He's the real deal. You want that report from me? Who doesn't think so? I think he's the real deal. I like him. Count 22 says people are always watching Michigan. Yeah, people are, but they're not watching them in the non-conference Count 22. People weren't tuning in to watch Michigan beat Hawaii. I'll tell you what, Michigan, a minute into the Hawaii game, I watched the whole thing. I like, routes, and I know I get it and everything else, but it was a minute into the game. It's kind of like, as exciting as Michigan football is, a minute into the Hawaii game, it's like I'm kind of watching a practice. And yeah, Colorado State, it was the opener. I got news for you. When you say people, you mean Michigan fans are always watching Michigan. They'll watch the highlights and they'll look at the numbers. But I'll tell you, how many people are voting for the Heisman Trophy? 3,000 or something. You take the people that aren't covering Michigan out there. How many people you think watched Michigan in the first 3 weeks of the season? Watch an entire game. I'm going to give you the number. 0. They watched the highlights. They looked at the numbers. Maybe they watched Michigan at Iowa. Because the first road test might have been something there. Michigan, Penn State. Hey, is Michigan really the real deal? That's when I was going to start looking at the statistics. Michigan looked great that game. Who else were they watching them play? Michigan State? Maybe Michigan State. But this isn't true. Antoine wants to back up Account 22. People are watching us even when they try to throw salt on our cupcakes, which I love. Yeah, not true, Antoine. They watch the highlights. They're not watching Michigan play. I got news for you. They're not sitting around watching Michigan play Hawaii. I mean, if you guys think that, you can think whatever you want, but it's not happening. Let's see what Victor has to say. He can easily see JJ playing his way into being the third quarterback off the board next year. Caleb Williams, May from North Carolina, and then JJ, especially if he plays well in leading Michigan to the Natty. Yeah, Victor, there's a path there. I think what you say is true. I just think quarterback needs some good experience. Plus, he's got a shot at an Natty next year or Heisman if he doesn't get it this year. That is rare. Yeah, sure. I think you would like, if I was a pro team, I would like the quarterback that I was getting to be, somebody that it wasn't a 1-year wonder, wasn't a 2-year wonder, had a lot of experience playing in college. And then, you could go and, think about playing them as maybe even a rookie. The thing to remember is that Patrick Mahomes sat his first year and play. Pretty decent Chiefs team until the last game of the year. They sat Alex Smith out. The Chiefs had already clinched, and they played Mahomes. He looked pretty good that last game. And then they knew they had something special. But The point there is that, yeah, you like to have your guys with some experience. Takeover will be so sweet. I'm not sure what that one is. People love Michigan quarterbacks. Signed Dennis Franklin. Dennis Franklin, who went to the Lions as a wide receiver. It was a different time, a different era for that. AJ saying OSU fans watch Michigan more than Michigan. There's a tons of OSU fans on the show now. They just don't comment. Hey, what's up, Buckeye fans? No, I don't know. Let's see. Mark, he's real, but needs to deliver in big game. As much as Michigan decries Stroud, he played extremely well, and his team, not he, was the problem. I don't know if he's talking about JJ. I think so. Yeah, JJ delivered. That's the thing. JJ delivered in the Ohio State game. There was no bigger game on the road than the Ohio State game, and JJ delivered. But yeah, he needs to. If we're talking about not throwing 2 pick sixes in a college football semi, I'm with you on that. And Stroud, third base had him. If there are Ohio State fans watching, I think they would agree with this. You go back and watch the Michigan Ohio State game. Harbaugh had his team confident, and in the times that he gambled on some fourth downs and in some other like risky plays, you think about the throw to Mullings. I mean, he was rolling the dice a little bit, but it gave the team a confidence behind him. Ohio State, there was a couple of 4th and 2. He's got Stroud and he's got Marvin Harrison. He's got all this, and he was like, punt. And how many instances were there? There were at least 3. The Ohio State fans that are on the chat, could let me know. Buckeye Bill or something. Where if Jim Harbaugh was coaching Ohio State, he would have gone for it in those 3 times. And look, it's always great until you don't make it. But when you've got Stroud and you've got the kind of offense and line, the kind of team that you have, that was one of the factors in that game. Day crawled into a shell and played nervous. Meanwhile, Harbaugh was out there, let his hair out, and was letting it fly. Well, you can see what letting it fly sometimes backfires on you, but it didn't against Ohio State. And then Stroud came back and played fabulous against Georgia. You know that. Let's see. He was the best player on the field versus Michigan. Let's see. Stroud. Is this Buckeye Mark? Stroud at Michigan gets 2 Heismans and maybe 2 natties. I don't know about that, Mark. I don't know if you're gonna. I'm not feeling that. Are you feeling some recruiting? I'll get to that. If you want to know what's going on in recruiting, I suggest, like I do every day, that you should join up with the Maize and Blue Review today by going to michigan.rivals.com. When you join the den, I would also suggest you say, hey, I took Dennis's advice and I joined up, and now here I am all the time, all day, all night, contributing to threads and the discussion on the Maize and Blue Review. Thumbs up. So get that done, and you who can know the latest about recruiting. I've got some things on recruiting. You remember I've got my 50 and 5 that I put out about a month ago, and Justin Scott, he had basketball season. He's still out there, seems to be just chilling. Childs is got a top 8, including Michigan, Maryland, Ohio State, and so it's going to June is the month that we're thinking about with Childs, who's number 4 in the 50 and 5. Priestcorn is somebody to keep an eye on. I am this close. they're throwing in a forecast on Prescorn. Going to have to make a few more calls. Going to have to sit around and think about that a little bit more. But it would not surprise me if this happens this month. Talking about BP to U of M, the outstanding tight end from Rochester Hills. I think that could happen. The other two on the 50 and 5 have committed. Marshall, the running back out of Cincy, committed, and of course Davis, who had a forecast in on, he committed as well, as you know. But then there were some other ones, +1. Still keeping an eye on Amarian Stewart. That could happen for Michigan. Brian Robinson, the linebacker out of Ohio. That could happen at any time. Blake Frazier, I expect to happen soon as another commitment to Michigan. Who else are we looking at? There was the picture of the boys a couple weeks ago when they were all there. Jacob Oden, who's one of Michigan's commitments for the 24 class. He's been recruiting 4 guys for Michigan. Boo Carter, Bryce West. Everybody in the country wants these guys. And Oden continues to do his work with them. Beasley now has moved way up the line here, if you're a Michigan fan, where there's a lot of people. I'm not saying it, but there's a lot of people that are saying that Beasley's Michigan's to lose now. I don't know. Like, it kind of came out of nowhere. He did have that visit, I think 2 weeks ago, but the linebacker from Belleville is looking more maize and blue as the days go by, which is great news for Michigan with Beasley because he's an outstanding linebacker prospect. And oh yeah, his teammate Underwood, Michigan would like to see. That's not going to hurt their chances if they have a good chance, and I think they do right now with Underwood. Scott's the one who, if you remember, and he's part of the Oden 4, that he had a quote that that Michigan definitely made a move. And old Scott put out a top, what did he put out? A top 12 today? Maybe yesterday. He put out a top 12 recently, and Michigan's one of the 12. So, Springfield, Ohio. If Michigan won this one, this would be like winning another Ohio State game if they're able to win this recruiting battle. Maybe they will be able to do it. So it's something to keep an eye on. But that's some of the latest as it goes down with recruiting. Okay. Remember, tomorrow is the McCarthy spring game video that we looked through. Mark talking about elite wide receivers that may jump into the May portal. Yeah, I don't know. Michigan, I don't think he's going to be looking for any elite. I mean, when you say elite, I guess you never, if somebody elite is jumping in the portal, but Michigan's, pretty flush in terms of their scholarships. And so, I mean, you're always looking at it, but I'd like to be, instead of being like reasonable, like with the portal and be like, well, let's just let it out. Sure. Let's look. You never know what kind of superstar is going to end up in the portal. So, it could happen. Let's do it. Scott's ready for that pre-scoring. Scott, if you work on it tomorrow, I'm going to make another call tonight, and so we'll see. Is Michigan going to be number 1 after it is all said and done? Number 1 in recruiting or number 1 in the country? Well, what are you talking about? Look at AJ's got a good feeling on Aaron Scott. Let's see what Go Blue is saying. Tom Brady has 3 times as many career touchdown passes as every former OSU QB in NFL history combined. Little Tom Brady over the top at you. You always come back to that, can't you? The coach wants Taylor Tatum. I think, me and the coach agree that Tatum, the running back from Texas, is a priority, and I'm right with you. I want him too. Count 22 is not buying my June commitment. He's thinking Childs is going to happen sooner than June. Okay. He's got the reason I said I'll give you my line of thinking. I wasn't, talking with somebody behind the scenes, although I did talk to his high school coach a while back. Childs put out in mid-March a group of 8 schools, and he's coming back to Michigan. So, and he was at Michigan on the 17th, and he said he's going to come back in June. In the meantime, he's going to visit these other schools. So, maybe he's going to these other schools and he's just, got the maize and blue eyes already. And he's just going around. He's like, you know what? Forget it. I don't need to go. I don't need to go to Florida State and Florida and Notre Dame. And it's over. I'm just accepting the challenge now. Maybe you'll be right at count 22, but I'll stay with my June prediction. Go Blue. Arguing about OSU quarterbacks and that they don't produce pro quarterbacks. Stroud will end up like the rest of them. This is something that sports fans do that I think that is where you fall into a trap just because. And there's some system guys. You go back when Houston back in the day, they were throwing the ball all the time, and the Lions got suckered in, with Andre Ware, and then there was another quarterback that also went in the first round. It was a system thing because they put the ball up so much. But the thing with Ohio State, and I think it's fun as a Michigan fan being like, oh, their quarterbacks all suck in the pros or whatever else, but Fields doesn't suck. And the other quarterbacks that you're talking about, there's only one that was, Haskins was taken in the first round. He was a 1-year wonder, but it seems like Haskins had some off the field issues. So he may have been okay, but I just because the Ohio State quarterbacks, did you really think that that JT Barrett was going to be a pro quarterback? No, you didn't. So it's just kind of a silly thing to say. But people use it against Michigan all the time too. What would they use it on? The Michigan skill players use it there. Michigan's had the Brady situation that they could always, lay at everybody there. But yeah, but no, it doesn't stop people. But you don't think Stroud's going to be any good? Yeah, because he went to Ohio State. I think what you're talking about, people understand. All right. Sideways. Do you think Junior Colson regressed last year? Was it why do you think Junior Colson regressed last year? Was it because of the linebackers coach or was it chemistry? Well, when you say regressed, did you think he was great in the non-conference or early in the Big Ten? Could have been an injury. Could have been when you're talking about, playing in bigger games. What was the game? I'm thinking about where, there was the one highlight for the other team and Colson was right there. Junior Colson's is a good linebacker. I don't, when you're talking about regression, I'd have to look into that a little bit more. I'm not sure I agree with there was a regression, and I think it's always easy when a coach leaves. Yeah, George Hilo wasn't all that good. That also sounds like an easy thing that a lot of people use, fans and some of the media as well. So I'm not going that. And I don't think the chemistry. What I would go to, I would think about injury, and then I would think about playing in bigger games. But I'm not sure I agree that Colson regressed. So you're giving me the reason. So I just don't. I would have to look into that a little bit more. Maybe you got some numbers, or maybe you're listening to somebody that feels that way, and maybe they know what they're talking about. I just don't feel like that. Look, they call him a kid. the kid played as a true freshman. When you do that and you play the amount of snaps that he played, and then you come back. I mean, I think sometimes people are expecting, these guys to be a finished product or, superstars. If you play as a true freshman, it's not always the case. And, sometimes guys are dealing with things and working through things. And then sometimes guys end up on the tape in some situations where you see where, the it gets replayed a lot, and then you always see 25. You're like, oh, he didn't play that well, or he's regressed. And I'm not sure that's true. That's what I'm talking about. Let's see. Let's see what Mark says. It's not hard to predict NFL failure by QB. It's a long list of college standouts that don't make it. Yeah, that's right. But it is. I mean, that you're being reasonable, Mark. I like, and not that it matters for sideways, because look, it's Ohio State, and they're let's trash Ohio State. Like, that's what we do. We trash them. So I get that. But if we're going to be honest, I'm more, talking about, the not this. I don't think they're system QBs. I do know there was, and I think it was Stephen Threet who was on a Twitter last year talking about it's just a one read offense for these QBs. That's why they suck. It's like, I don't know. Like, guy played the position. Maybe he's on to something there. But if I was the Houston Texans and they called me up, because I think Bryce Young's going number one. I think the Houston Texans should take CJ Stroud number two. I think he could be an outstanding quarterback. And if he's a system quarterback, I'll tell you what the system looked really good was against Georgia, where they damn near beat him by that close, OT. And again, it's coming down because of, they got the Buckeye helmets and everything else. You're like, screw these guys, puke, to hell with them, everything else. The guy was throwing a big time, showing a big time arm, showing big time touch, big time mobility. He looked like a pretty good quarterback to me. Now, hey, maybe he's just a system guys like all those OSU guys. And I think people do it hoping that that's the case, and somehow it'll reflect on high school kids, and they'll get it, and they'll stop going to Ohio State, and everything that you say, try to talk it into existence, and maybe Ohio State will go, down the drain. I think there's a lot of that's going on here too, but that's it. That's it when it comes down to it. I'm there. Charlie Ward, Heisman, not one snap in the NFL. I love Charlie Ward. It's pretty good guard for the Knicks. Fields is mediocre. He's a mediocre passer. He's the best runner, this side of Lamar Jackson, which makes him being a quarterback in the way the game's being played right now with a chance where they could win with him. So mediocre passer. I think he's a little bit better than a mediocre quarterback, but that's me. Like, I feel like I'm falling into like, this is the Scarlet and Gray review. Richard's talking about Michigan with NFL guys that weren't even first stringers. I'm not sure what we're arguing here today. Get down to the end. Let's see. One more. Go Blue. I'm not being biased when saying OSU has never produced a decent NFL QB. It's simply a fact. Fields is too young to tell. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. And here's what I'm here to tell you, Go Blue. It doesn't matter that CJ Stroud, if you're a GM, this is the way I'll put it to you. You're a GM of the Texans, and Bryce Young goes off the clock. And I'm also working with you as a GM for the Texans. I'll say, look, we're Michigan fans. You want to go with Will Levis? You want to go with Anthony Richardson? Who's going to be, or do you think CJ Stroud? And you'll come at me and say, there's never been an OSU quarterback that's worked out in the NFL. And I'll say, What's that have to do with the price of tea here today? There's been a lot of different coaches here. Let's look at this specific guy in that offense last year and the year before. Now tell me, do you have an OSU bias? Are you really? Does it matter anything that happened 10 years ago? Did it matter that Troy Smith was a little bit too short and that, it was Jim Tressel? Does it matter that they play in Columbus? Does it matter that it was Urban Meyer? Or are we going with Ryan Day? Is it because Haskins had an off-field issue? Now you have an issue here that Fields is more of a runner than a passer. Is that affecting you with Stroud? No, I'm asking you because you are making it sound like, and it's a fun thing as a Michigan fan, like, Ohio State QBs, they suck. I'm asking you. You're on the clock. You're saying he's going to suck because they've never produced one, or are you just saying it? Maybe you're just saying it. Maybe you're saying it because F OSU and then the train that they sing blank you and the car you rolled in on. I forget what the saying is. But you know what? I think at the end, I'm just going to agree with you on that. Blank Ohio State quarterbacks and the train that they came in on. That's close to the saying, even though I don't feel like that's the perfect one. All right. Oh, we do have Stroud just looks like he has no heart to me. Maybe I'm wrong. When I was watching the Michigan game, I said the same thing. Go Blue, like, I hope the Lions don't pick Stroud. But then I watched him play against Georgia, and I changed my mind. And look, the quarterbacks. Andre saying if CJ Stroud busts, you might still keep your job. Quarterbacks, it used to be, it felt like a 50-50 proposition. Now it's less than that. So it's tough evaluating these guys and then getting them, like we know just how you get a Joe Burrow and you're like, oh man, this is awesome. This is going to be awesome for our football. It's going to be awesome for our organization for 10 years. But look at all the other ones that go by the wayside. But, you pick them with the idea that you might be able to get one of those guys. Let's go. Let's go, Gary. Antoine wants me to tell us the first great NFL quarterback from OSU. Yeah. What I'm telling you is it doesn't matter, Antoine. Like, what's it matter? I mean, who was the last great LSU quarterback before Joe Burrow? I'm waiting, Antoine. You tell me. Should I have looked and said, oh, you know what? This guy's going to be another Jamarcus Russell. You tell me. LSU, their offense always blows. Their quarterbacks, they always suck. They just recruit defensive guys. This is just a 1-year deal where he was out there. He's a system quarterback. Where's all that going? I'm asking you, Antoine. You tell me. You got the answers. You can't think of one either. The point is, it doesn't matter that much where you go to school. Sometimes the system thing, and it can be. But do you really think? I'm going to ask you people a question. Do they really think Ohio State quarterbacks? I mean, Joe Burrow went there, but he doesn't count because he transferred. So, but what if he would have stayed there? Would he have sucked? I don't know where you guys are at. A lot of that. People used to use that against Michigan with a lot of things. You don't want to do that. None of their guys, they all suck. That's it. I'll wait, Antoine. I won't give you, you can't come up with anybody like that. I'll give you 24 hours. Tomorrow, quarterback talk. JJ McCarthy. I'll watch some film on him. And yeah, Burrow would have never been picked number one because he would have sucked at Ohio State, even though it was a system there, but it wouldn't have been a good system for him. And then, it wouldn't have worked for him. Got it. All right. We'll see you tomorrow here at 1 o'clock. Thanks for watching.